You're not going to believe this. Indonesia, a country thousands of miles away from the Middle East, has the largest Muslim population on earth, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Egypt, bigger than Iraq. Combined, we're talking about 245 million Muslims, making up roughly 90% of the population. How did a nation so far from the birthplace of Islam become its biggest home? Here's the twist. Indonesia didn't become the world's largest Muslim nation through war or conquest. Not a single sword raised, not a single battle fought. This is a completely different story, a strange, almost unbelievable journey that most people have never heard of. It's a historical record so remarkable that even the great Muslim empires had to tip their hats. And in this video, we're going to unravel how it all happened, through trade routes, iconic figures, and brilliant political and cultural decisions that reshaped an entire nation. To find the answers, I spent months digging through archives, decoding forgotten chronicles, and following the footsteps of sailors, sultans, and storytellers. What I uncovered surprised me, because this transformation wasn't simple. It wasn't dramatic in the way you'd expect. It was slow, strange, and completely mesmerizing. So what really happened? How did Islam take root in a faraway island nation? Not through bloodshed, but through something else? Could there be a hidden force that changed the course of history? A force we've all overlooked? Indonesia, a distant island nation far from the Middle East, is where Islam left its deepest mark. But here's the mystery. There were no armies, no holy wars, no bloodshed. So how did Islam get here? Not through conquest, but through something far more unexpected. It didn't arrive with swords. It came with spices, sea breeze, and quiet greetings in unfamiliar tongues. A faith that spread, not by force, but by presence. And the deeper we dig, the stranger the story becomes. Imagine this. Lok Sumawe, North Sumatra. It's a misty morning in 1250. The sea breeze carries the scent of pepper, cinnamon, and wood smoke. Hundreds of wooden sailboats drift into the harbor from Yemen, Oman, Gujarat, Guangzhou, bringing strange tongues, rare spices, and something else. Near bags of cinnamon and Persian silk lies a soft leather bundle. Inside, handwritten pages of the Quran, Arabic letters flowing like whispers from another world. But there are no soldiers here, no swords, no orders, just men in white robes, turbans wrapped with care, shaking hands with warm smiles. They bow slightly, Assalamu alaikum, a greeting of peace. They weren't here to preach, they simply came to live their faith. They woke before dawn to pray under open skies, washed in river water, shared meals, traded fairly, helped the poor, no questions asked. They didn't preach, they listened, they learned the language, joined local festivals with quiet curiosity. To the villagers, they weren't conquerors, they were kind. A dock worker, a market guard, a woman selling bananas, all began to wonder, who are these people? Why are they so good? That wonder turned into trust, trust into friendship, and friendship into a new kind of community. They married locals, raised families, kept their rituals, and slowly Islam entered, not like an outsider, but like a familiar guest who never tried to take over, only to belong. And then something began to shift. Kids started using Arabic greetings. Men paused to pray at the same hours as the merchants. Women wore light veils, not from pressure, but because it felt graceful. And without preaching, without campaigns, locals began asking, "Can you teach me your faith?" Neighborhoods like the Gujarat Quarter, Persian Street, and Arab Lane took shape. Not as ghettos, but as gateways. Because learning Islam meant learning how to trade, how to carry yourself with dignity, how to grow. Right here, amid sea breeze and the scent of spices, between every Assalamu alaikum and Walaikum salam, Islam took root. No blood, no conquest, just kindness and presence. In villages like Baris, Gresik, and Lok Sumawe, locals were used to foreign traders, slick, loud, gone with the wind. But then came the Muslims. They didn't preach, they lived. Simple clothes, gentle speech, fair trade. They prayed on time, even in busy markets. They kept their word, even for tiny deals. They helped without expecting anything. And people noticed. Why stop at noon to wash and bow to the sky? Why help an old woman just because? Why fast all day and still smile? Day by day, small moments became quiet lessons. Kids mimicked their prayers, women admired their respect, and elders began asking, not with suspicion but wonder. Islam didn't come with sermons. It came with a way of life people wanted to follow. No pressure, no force, no demands to forget their ancestors. Just honest people, living with grace, discipline, and compassion. And that quiet example, it spoke louder than any words. A farmer asked questions, a market guard listened to the prayers, a dock worker changed shifts to witness the rituals. Islam took root, not in declarations, but in daily actions. Keeping promises, cleaning up after trade, helping others without asking for thanks. From those habits, new communities formed. Prayer corners in markets, traders teaching kids to read, villages slowly turning toward one God, while keeping their music, their colors, their festivals. This wasn't conquest. It was trust. It was people choosing something because it felt right. But this was just the beginning. Once the people converted, the ripple reached the palace. What happens when kings and queens start paying attention? Was it admiration or something more? A strategy to elevate their kingdoms, not through war, but through trade and diplomacy. That's when Islam evolved, from a personal faith to a political tool, a key to global influence. It started with villagers, then merchants, then nobles. But no one expected this. The entire island paused when a king converted. No war, no pressure, no conquest. Just one reason: he believed it was the right path for his people. What haunted him? His people were poor. His kingdom, rich in resources, central in trade, was still falling behind. But he noticed something. The strongest, most trusted societies all had one thing in common. They lived by Islamic values: justice, order, unity, trust. And so he asked, if we follow their way, could we rise too? Then he made history. Miraculous embraced Islam, becoming Sultan Malik al-Saleh. He didn't just convert, he rewrote his kingdom's future, spiritually, politically, culturally, and founded the first Islamic kingdom in Indonesia, the Sultanate of Samudra Pasai. But this wasn't just faith. It was strategy, bold and brilliant. Islam gave him access to a trusted global trade network. He rebuilt governance on Sharia, justice, order, accountability, and the people, they didn't resist. They followed because it felt right, a path that honored them, that made sense. Sultan Malik al-Saleh didn't just change himself, he rewrote his kingdom's fate. Today, his tomb still stands in Loksumoe, carved with Arabic calligraphy, wrapped in Gujarat patterns, a symbol of faith, trade, and rooted identity. This wasn't a conquest, it was a triumph of vision, a king who didn't conquer with force, but led with wisdom. When a king converts, not out of fear, not by force, but by choice, what does that tell us? Maybe Islam had become more than faith. Maybe it was now a door to power, prestige, and a new future. We think people convert out of devotion, but kings, they don't follow emotion. They calculate, they plan. So what was it in Islam that made royals risk their legacy and step into a path they could never turn back from? To understand why kings converted, zoom out. In the 13th century, Indonesia wasn't a country. It was a patchwork of port cities, fishing villages, and inland realms, thriving on one thing: maritime trade. And at the center, the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest trade routes in the world. But here's the catch. There were no courts, no contracts. Only one thing mattered: trust. And the most trusted? Muslim merchants. So when a kingdom embraced Islam, they didn't just choose a faith. They joined a global network of trust that stretched from Gujarat to Persia to Arabia, all the way to East Africa. And almost overnight, everything changed. Muslim kingdoms got priority in trade. Their ships were protected by Islamic commercial law. They unlocked bigger markets with better prices and safer routes. This wasn't just religion, it was a global economic passport. And Islam asked for almost nothing in return. It didn't erase culture, didn't ban dances, music, or harvest rituals. It blended in and elevated everything it touched. For rulers, it was a governance dream. Clear law, Sharia, a support system, the ulama, a moral code that united people, and a God that asked kings not to rule like gods, but to serve with justice. And the ripple spread fast. After Samudra Pasai came Malacca, Java, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, until mighty Islamic kingdoms rose: Demak, Aceh, Mataram. Islam didn't conquer Indonesia. Indonesia came to Islam. Now here's the real wonder. It makes sense why kings chose Islam, for politics, for trade. But what about the people? The farmers, the fishermen, the artisans with no throne to defend? They embraced Islam, fast, freely, without force, no threats, no rewards, no reason to abandon their gods, and yet they did. Why? Maybe because Islam didn't try to dominate their culture. It listened, it adapted, it honored what was already there. The Indonesians didn't stop honoring ancestors. They still played gamelan, danced in mask festivals, prayed for harvests. Islam didn't erase, it renewed. It added meaning to weddings, refined rituals, without killing tradition. Like a new robe wrapped around an old soul, Islam didn't ask them to forget who they were. It just helped them become more of who they'd always been. So how did such a quiet transformation take hold? Because Islam wasn't brought by conquerors. It came through merchants, mystics, Sufi teachers, men who knew this truth. You don't force a seed to grow, you nurture it at the right time, in the right soil. And that's what the Sufis did. They spoke the local tongue, told stories like village legends, taught faith with drums, poetry, and cultural rhythm. Islam didn't stand outside the culture, it stood within. In ancient Batik art, you see mosques. In names like Ahmad Sugiharto, tradition and faith intertwine. In old poems, Arabic Jawi dances across the page. Islam wasn't just accepted, it became part of the Indonesian soul. And in less than 200 years, it spread beyond the coasts, into the mountains, the forests, the far-off islands. Not by force, but by listening. Islam took root in the hearts of the people. It rose through nobles, it was embraced by kings. But what made it explode? Across thousands of islands, faster than anyone expected, it didn't come from Mecca, not from Java, but from an unlikely source. A Muslim, a Chinese admiral, commander of the largest fleet the world had ever seen. In 1405, while Europe struggled with wooden boats, China launched a naval giant. At its helm, Admiral Zheng, a man whose voyages would reshape the spiritual map of Southeast Asia. He wasn't just a sailor, he was on a mission from the Ming Emperor: bring harmony, share gifts, rule the seas. So Zheng set sail, with silk, porcelain, maps of the stars, and Islam quietly pulsing in his heart. At Malacca and northern Sumatra, he met young Muslim sultans. But he came not with threats, he came with gifts, with alliances, with peace. A man trusted with the power of life and death, chose diplomacy over dominance. He helped the sultans set trade rules, gain China's favor, and hold off rival empires. This wasn't just diplomacy, it was global recognition. In 1411, he escorted Sultan Parameswara to the Ming court. The Sultan bowed and was granted a title, a jade seal, and protection from the dragon throne itself. That moment changed everything. A Muslim king in Southeast Asia, recognized by Imperial China, not as a threat, but as a partner. From then on, Islam became more than a merchant's faith, it became state legitimacy. Sultans gained prestige backed by Chinese power, and the Indonesian archipelago entered its golden Islamic age. Not by conquest, but by sea and strategy. From spices and whispered greetings to royal alliances, to voyages under China's dragon flag, Islam took a path no one saw coming and became the faith of over 200 million Indonesians. But here's the real question. Why have they held on to it for centuries, even with total freedom to walk away? What makes Islam not just survive, but become the soul of a nation? If you're as curious as I was, drop a comment. Let's keep going. Let's find out.